some Bengals news. At the Growler, we got you. Hot takes, interviews from your host, Paul Jr.
All right, welcome into the latest edition of The Growler. I guess we're kind of going to call this a little bit of an emergency podcast, although it wasn't as urgent, maybe as some true emergencies that happened. But still, we wanted to give some time, some room to breathe, as they say in the podcast business, to the Logan Wilson conversation. So myself, Charlie Goldsmith, are here to talk a little bit about Logan Wilson, his trade request, and where we go from here. How are we doing, Charlie?
I'm doing great, Paul. How are you?
I'm great. I don't know. You and I, a couple of weeks ago, were really the two main people. Some other people came and went that went over to Logan's locker after the game, after he had been benched for Barrett Carter in Green Bay. And I would be willing to say it was the most vocally frustrated and directive towards coaching staff, front of whatever you want to call it, that we've seen any player be around here in a little bit, outside of non-Trey Hendrickson division, and certainly this entire season. And for that to be coming from a guy who had a C on his chest, that was jarring. So that, to me, makes this request from Logan Wilson not entirely surprising. What was your feel on the initial move from Logan to request a trade?
It was natural, but for a player who was, I believe, their sixth highest paid player, who has 2 more years of team control and is already out of their plans, it was natural for that guy to feel like he just doesn't fit. And he didn't fit. And the Bengals decided that he didn't fit. The idea is the Bengals had to have considered, and ideally, in theory, they did, getting to this point when you bench Logan in the first place. It's a very direct, understandable, reasonable, realistic plan A to plan B. The Bengals held the cards of benching Logan, and that's their decision that we've talked about and we'll continue to talk about. And then the reasonable response from Logan is to say, I have 2 more years. What's my future here? I'm your 6th highest paid guy, and I'm on the bench. This doesn't match up. So Logan requested a trade. Very easy to see how you got from point A to point B. But to me, the more interesting debate is why they benched him in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, he, wasn't playing well enough, obviously, and they went this direction of the future of this team needs to be these 2 young linebackers that they've drafted defensively. I think that's clear that they feel like those need to be the guys. And so the only way that those guys are going to start to develop to the future is going to be to start playing right now. We've been talking, I feel like this has been so consistent across this entire team, where in areas where they have been struggling this year, it's been like, yeah, it's the same conversation that's happening at guard. It's like you have a guy who's fine. You have a guy who's at a certain level. You have rookies that you have invested in to become part of the future of this team that maybe right now they're not as good, but at least there's an ascending level to where you could see them become that in time with experience. And so the full investment into those guys as early as possible gives you a better chance of this team being better in the long haul, even if right now it steps on some feelings, it hurts some people, and it maybe causes some things like saying, I want to be traded from a guy with a C on his chest.
What I find so fascinating about this, and I talked to Mike Hodges the other day, was starting in Minnesota when they started rotating Barrett in, and I've talked to multiple people about this, the plan was truly about maintaining Logan for the long haul of the season, and a guy who was coming back from a major injury in 2024 being a way to load manage. Logan was their guy in their plan for the long haul. And then it was what Mike called an organizational decision. And everyone keeps mentioning Zach's name, and Zach's the main character in this, because this is a very head coachy thing to do. You make this decision while you're risking a captain requesting a trade. You're putting all your faith in a 4th round pick. There are shifting dynamics on the field, at the line of scrimmage, in the locker room. there's a lot going on that's well beyond, oh, well, Barrett just triggers downhill better as a run blitzer and is better at taking on blocks. Like, there's a lot of stuff here. And this has been probably Zach's most aggressive year as a head coach. You look at this linebacker decision. You look at making Cam Taylor-Britt inactive. You look at what they're doing at guard. You look at, and I know this technically wasn't Zach's decision, but you look at trading for a quarterback and then starting him in 5 days. Zach's been doing a lot of stuff. Very head coachy. And of course, it's got to work. The vision plan has to meet where the team is at. But it's a much different style of managing a program than we've seen from Zach in any other season.
I think it's been one that comes from a recognition from the head coach that the guys that have been here are not good enough. And maybe a recognition that the guys that were brought in aren't good enough either. And regardless, it's that a lot of things are not good enough here. And to whether it's looking elsewhere, whether it's this incredible investment in draft picks so early, it's just that it needs to look and feel different. Everything that's been happening here has not been good enough. Now, let's get into the logistics of what happens next. Logan Wilson has a contract where he's signed through 2027. There's dead money on that. That is about $6 million that the Bengals, look at. And I think certainly you're going to feel like in this offseason, you would expect them to let Logan go. They would have cap savings in that. But a pretty big dead hit by Bengals standards if they take it. So they're going to be saying, if somebody wants to take on Logan Wilson and this contract, which is substantial, they're going to listen. I don't get the sense that there's a lot of people that are interested in that contract, nor would I. It's just a big number for a guy to come in and fill a role right now, for a team to take on. Now, maybe somebody would, but that is also a part of this where if you are looking at what does compensation look like for Logan Wilson, his contract hurts that. Because it's a significant number. You're trading the person and the deal that other team is on the hook for. So the idea that, maybe they can get back the fifth that they lost in the Flacco trade here, I don't know that that's realistic here.
What he is ideally is a nice rotational third linebacker, not the, on a great defense, not the every down 4 interceptions plus 10 pass breakups a year, true 3 down stopper that Logan Wilson had been in the past. He hasn't, it really started last year. Like, something that's been a discouraging part of his game is, can he just get through the line of scrimmage and attack someone and thud you and stop you with the way that he drives, the way that, like, think of the stuff that ideally in your head Demetrius Knight would do well if he were playing consistent, like that downhill ability. Wilson hasn't shown that now in a couple of years. So if he's not giving you that as a run stopper, a lot of teams have more, outside linebacker concepts. Like, he's not quite a fit for every spot on every team. He's not like a true line of scrimmage guy, for example. It shrinks and shrinks and shrinks the schemes he fits and the schemes where he'd fit in a prominent role. Again, he's a third linebacker right now on one of the worst defenses in football. So that's a reflection of where Logan's at. I think he'd been playing perfectly fine, well enough to be a starter on this defense, but it's not the sort of playmaking, change your defense with an instant type of impact like Ernest Jones made like a year or two ago when he went to Seattle. Like, that's not who Logan is. The contract is who he is as much as anything.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the contract, you're talking about the level of player, and then the demand. So how many teams are really going to be in need of this? The obvious would be Indianapolis and Lou Anarumo. They have injuries. Dallas has a bad defense that's looking for help specifically at Logan's position of middle linebacker. Maybe there's something to be had there. But again, I think if we're run passer booting this in the most likely scenario, I think by a long shot is Logan's still here in November and December and continuing to play the same role as the base linebacker on this team.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me that the Bengals don't always acknowledge trade requests? Is there a history of this happening?
There is a bit of a history. I don't know if people have been paying attention here. Just because you make a trade request does not necessarily mean you're going to be traded. In fact, it quite often usually means you will not be traded. They also
What we
don't like
need,
to make
yeah,
deals at the deadline.
that's
The same
also
way.
true.
There's two things that they rarely do is serve up because somebody says I want out of here, and trade somebody away midseason that is playing a role on the current team. I've been saying this in the Trey Hendrickson conversation here about people saying, oh, they're going to trade Trey. Could they trade Trey? Like, no, there is no legitimate history of them trading away at the deadline someone who has a role to help them win games this year. It is not something they do or have done. And now the question would be, how much is there maybe a addition by subtraction version in Logan? I don't necessarily see that, and I don't think they see it that way, but maybe there's an argument that somebody's making that right now at this point in the season when they have gone young at that position.
I'm going to say what the ideal world is. Actually, the idea world was that Logan kind of, as like Ted Karras said in the preseason, filled Sam Hubbard's shoes and was reignited by the new defense and all. That was the ideal world. That didn't happen. The ideal world now is that you can do Billy Price for BJ Hill part 2. And there's some pass rushing defensive tackle out there. I haven't gone through the depth charts yet and matched up links in that regard. But again, that's when Logan's contract comes into play. So that limits trade value opportunities. It'd have to be a team that was pretty desperate for a linebacker and again was a scheme fit for Logan. So like there's a lot at play here for a guy who, he told us, what did Zach say? He needed more splash. A guy who's not giving you a ton of splash on defense right now is a tougher guy to sell as a midseason acquisition now that we're down this road on both sides.
Yeah. So they go forward now. You have the trade deadline is just a week and a half away, essentially getting closer. But I would say right now, the expectations would be that we don't see any deal and we see Logan Wilson continue to be around playing the rest of the season in a Bengals uniform with the acknowledgement from both sides that this will probably be his last year in Cincinnati. But I understand where he's coming from. He's looking at his contract saying, I need to go prove I can still play so that I can collect the money that I do have left on my contract. He has a lot of money left in 26 and 27. And the only way he's going to collect it is if he proves he's still worth it. And that's clearly not going to happen here where they've diminished his role, barring an injury happening to Demetrius Knight or Barrett Carter, and he gets a chance to go out there and do it again. So I get what he's holding on to in that regard. There's a lot of money at stake. So, hey, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to request a trade to somewhere that will play me so that I can prove that I still should be getting this contract. Because if he doesn't, and he goes into some open market of free agency, it's a rough world, man. And I think everybody knows that it wouldn't look anything like the deal that he currently has in place. And you start to wonder at that point, for his sake, a guy who's a, well-grounded dude with a family who starts thinking about what's next in his career, do you then say, is that worth it for me to go out there and quite literally bang my head against the wall out here for another year or two if it's not going to be for real money, and what those decisions mean? All of those are things that he clearly doesn't want to get into right now. He wants to play football. And so we'll see if he gets the opportunity to play football. I have a feeling, though, the way the league works, if he stays here, he's going to start more games. Like Barrett and Demetrius are not going to stay clean. The idea that they're just going to stay healthy for sure. And they're definitely this happens all the time, where it's always the guy that ends up getting thrust back into the big role. And I think the Bengals know that, which is a reason why they're not just going to give him away for the sake of giving him away.
What did we learn from Jermaine Pratt and Joe Mixon? It is very important to these players to stay on the contract that they are on, as opposed to taking a stroll down cap casualty boulevard. That never goes well. It's scary down cap casualty boulevard. And that's where it's trending with Logan clearly. Now, another problem with the Bengals is if you stack up, and I don't have the list in front of me, but like their top 12 paid players on the team, it's like a guy in BJ Hill who's not giving you much production. It's a guy in like Gesicki who's out. It's, Logan's up there. He's like number 6. It's Cam Taylor-Britt, who's like their 6th corner. It's Geno Stone, who's not playing well. So the problem is that they're paying all the guys who they're not counting on defense, and who in some cases have had their roles reduced significantly or could have their roles reduced significantly at some point in the future. So that's disappointing team building. That hamstrings the Bengals significantly. But this is the young kids show now, and they're stuck with that. And it's why they hired Al Golden. It's the whole point of why they tried to build this player development ecosystem. But you actually have to do it, and that's just where they're stuck at right now.
It's the circle of NFL life. I remember when Logan Wilson was part of a roster that had too many players at the top of the balance sheet that weren't performing, and they went young and hoped to rebuild that way, and were able to do that with guys like him and Jermaine and through free agency. But conversations for another day. Make sure you keep it locked here. Charlie will be joining me on the walkout this week as Jay is gallivanting on the beaches, probably without shoes on, and singing songs at the top of his lungs and enjoying himself. We can't wait for Jay to get back. But Charlie and I will have you covered at Paycor Stadium, Bengals, Jets on Sunday as we recap everything that goes down from that game and much, much more. Rewatch coming your way on Monday. All of those things that you come to expect from us. So keep it locked to us on the channel, and we'll talk to you next time. Have a good one.